You've heard the twangy guitar lines that help define British rock. Now it's time to step into the world behind the sound. From quiet countryside beginnings to homes filled with music history, this is a closer look at the life and houses of Bruce Welch, the rhythm behind the shadows. Long before the sold-out concerts, gold records, and collaborations with legends like Cliff Richard and Olivia Newton-John, Bruce Welch lived a much quieter life. Born Bruce Cripps in Bognor Regis on England's south coast in 1941, his early childhood was anything but glamorous. When Bruce was just 6 years old, tragedy struck. His mother passed away, and his world changed overnight. He was sent north to live with his Aunt Sadie in a mining town of Chester-le-Street, County Durham. It was in this modest working-class environment that the seeds of his music career were first planted. The home Bruce grew up in with his aunt was simple, likely a two-up, two-down terrace typical of the area. Nothing flashy, but full of warmth and routine. This was the post-war Northeast, where coal dust clung to the windowsills and music was more often something you made yourself rather than bought. Inside those narrow walls, Bruce began strumming a guitar and soon formed a tight friendship with Hank Marvin, a fellow student and future bandmate. Together, in their teens, they created a skiffle group called the Railroaders, jamming in front rooms and local halls, dreaming of something bigger than their small-town lives. It was those quiet early days in that unassuming little house that helped shape Bruce's approach to music. Precise, rhythmically tight, and grounded. And that tone followed him even after he moved to London in the late 50s. Leaving the familiar streets of Chester-le-Street behind, Bruce arrived in the capital city with ambition and a guitar case, joining Marvin again to chase a shot at real success. And as fate would have it, it wasn't long before they connected with Cliff Richard and joined his backing band, the group that would soon become The Shadows. But those years in the North never really left Bruce. Even as he started touring and recording, he often talked about the strong sense of discipline and humility he picked up from his upbringing. It wasn't about fancy gear or expensive studios back then. It's about the feel of the music, about playing with heart, even if you were just practicing in a chilly back room on a secondhand guitar. Today, the Chester-le-Street home isn't famous, it doesn't show up on music tour maps, and it doesn't have a plaque. But in many ways, it should, because it was more than a house, it was a launchpad. The kind of place where the rhythm of British rock first found its beat in the hands of a quiet, determined teenager named Bruce Welch. By the early 1960s, Bruce Welch was no longer the teenager strumming chords in a small northern town. He had become a defining force in British music, riding the wave of success with The Shadows, the instrumental group that transformed the rock landscape alongside Cliff Richard. As fame took over and the charts filled with their hits like Apache, Wonderful Land, and FBI, Bruce's life shifted dramatically, from working-class terraces to music halls, from train rides to studio sessions. But behind the tours, TV appearances, and gold records, Welch built a life that reflected both his professional drive and personal grounding. During his high point in his career, one of Bruce's most notable residences was a home in Hadley Common, Hertfordshire. Nestled in a peaceful, leafy corner of North London, Hadley Common offered a serene contrast to the fast-paced music scene. The house was large, comfortable, and warm, not over the top or extravagant, but it had charm and character. It was here in the 1970s that Bruce lived with Olivia Newton-John, long before she became the international sensation that would steal hearts in Greece. They were engaged for a time, and this home became a center of creativity, affection, and shared ambition. Their relationship was more than romantic, it was musical too. Bruce, known not just for his guitar work but for his songwriting and production skills, helped shape Olivia's early recording career. In fact, many of her initial tracks were laid down under his watchful ear, either written or produced by Bruce himself. The Hadley Common Home served as both a base and a creative hub. Imagine cozy evenings spent going over lyrics in the kitchen, a guitar always close by, test recordings echoing from a small makeshift studio space. While the Shadows continued touring and releasing albums, Bruce was becoming increasingly involved behind the scenes, writing, arranging, and producing. His home life reflected this shift. Rather than getting caught up in the chaos of celebrity, Bruce used his space as a retreat. Even when things didn't work out between him and Olivia, their time in that house remained a significant chapter in both their lives. The house, in many ways, represented that crossover point where love and music intertwined and eventually drifted apart. Throughout the 70s and into the early 80s, Bruce kept evolving. Though the heyday of the Shadows had passed, his role in the British music industry remained strong. He worked with a new generation of artists and stayed close to Cliff Richard, continuing to contribute behind the scenes. While other rock stars chased flashier lives, Bruce's homes reflected something more thoughtful. His residences weren't about making a statement, they were places where real music was written, produced, and quietly appreciated. Eventually, Bruce moved to a beautiful spot in Richmond, Surrey, where he resides today. The house sits with a view of the River Thames, surrounded by lush trees and the calming hum of nature. It's the kind of place that feels like a full-circle moment. From the busy noise of showbiz to the stillness of the river bank, this home mirrors the journey of someone who's seen the highs of global stardom and chosen peace over spectacle. Richmond is known for its refined tranquility, and that's exactly what Bruce's current life reflects. Slower days, fond memories, and the freedom to create without pressure. He's been known to entertain guests in that Richmond home, old friends, fellow musicians, and longtime fans. There's a modesty to it all, but also a quiet pride. And tucked in his music room are relics from a life fully lived. Vintage guitars, records from every stage of his career, handwritten lyric sheets, and tour memorabilia that speak volumes. It's not a mansion meant to impress, it's a life museum built on harmony, craft, and care. During his later phase of his life, Bruce also founded Shadowmania, a yearly tribute event for fans of the Shadows that ran for over a decade. Held in the UK, it brought together diehard fans, tribute bands, and even former members of the original group. While the stage may have been the centerpiece, it was clear that the heart of the event came from Bruce's passion for the music and the fans. His Richmond home served as a sort of prep zone before each event. Quiet rehearsals, phone calls, planning sessions, and moments of nostalgia shared with old friends. Even now, with decades of legacy behind him, Bruce Welch continues to live with the same authenticity that first carried him from the north to London and onto the world stage. His homes, especially the ones tied to key moments in his personal and professional life, reflect his nature perfectly, welcoming, grounded, and deeply connected to the music. By the time Bruce Welch entered the later chapters of his life, he had already done what most musicians only dream of: helped shape the sound of British rock, scored countless chart toppers, and mentored some of music's biggest stars, and stood on the world's most famous stages. But if there's one thing Bruce Welch never sought, it was the spotlight for its own sake. While his contributions were massive, Welch always kept one foot grounded, and his homes, particularly in his later years, reflect that sense of personal balance and quiet purpose. Today, Bruce resides in Richmond, Surrey, in a charming, serene property that looks out over the River Thames. The house itself is elegant, but not gaudy. It's a far cry from the flashy celebrity mansions you might expect from someone with his kind of resume. Instead, it's a warm, lived-in home filled with books, instruments, old photos, and musical memories. From the outside, it might blend into the tree-lined streets of one of London's most peaceful suburbs. But inside, it's a treasure chest of music history, because every corner, every shelf, carries a piece of Bruce's legacy. You'll find framed photographs with Cliff Richard, gold records from the Shadows' greatest hits, and perhaps a scribbled lyric or two from sessions long past. There's a home studio setup, nothing too high-tech, just enough for Bruce to pick up a guitar when inspiration hits. This is not the home of someone trying to relive past glory. It's the home of someone who respects his history, but keeps his feet planted firmly in the present. Even as the years have rolled on, Bruce hasn't slowed down as much as he's become more selective. In 1998, he created Shadowmania, an annual concert event that celebrated the music and influence of the Shadows. Fans from all over the world flocked to it year after year, and Bruce was always at the center, curating acts, performing, sharing stories, and preserving the spirit of the band that helped define a musical era. The event ran for over a decade, not just as a tribute, but as a genuine act of love and continuity. It brought new energy to a fan base that had followed him since the 50s and introduced younger audiences to the magic of classic instrumental rock. Between gigs and appearances, Bruce's Richmond home became the informal headquarters for planning Shadowmania and other musical projects. It wasn't uncommon for close friends or old bandmates to drop in for a chat, a jam session, or even just a cup of tea overlooking the Thames. Those moments, offstage, unrehearsed, say more about Bruce than any chart statistic ever could. His greatest accomplishments were never just about fame, they were about friendship, collaboration, and the lifelong joy of making music that mattered. In 2004, Bruce was appointed an Officer of the Order of the British Empire, OBE, for his services to music. A well-deserved honor that added an official stamp to a legacy already sealed in the hearts of fans. For Bruce, the OBE wasn't about titles or ceremony. It was a nod to the years of dedication, the early morning writing sessions, the late-night recording marathons, and the quiet professionalism that earned him the respect of his peers. Despite his contributions to countless hits and his mentorship of stars like Olivia Newton-John, Bruce never demanded attention. Even now, in interviews and public appearances, he speaks with humility and warmth, often redirecting credit to his bandmates, collaborators, or the fans who stuck by him through decades of changing musical trends. And yet, Bruce's influence is everywhere, in the way British guitar music evolved, in the continued popularity of instrumental rock, and in the soundtracks of countless childhoods. He helped set the tone for a generation, and he did it from living rooms, hotel rooms, tour buses, and, yes, from the quiet comfort of homes that were always more than just a place to crash between shows. Today, Bruce Welch continues to live a life marked by dignity, creativity, and purpose. His Richmond home stands as a symbol of that journey, a place where the echoes of the Shadows still linger in the walls, where guitars still hum, and where music isn't just a profession, but a lifelong companion. In a world that often chases loudness and flash, Bruce Welch remains proof that true legends don't need to shout. Sometimes they speak through the music they've made, the lives they've touched, and the peaceful homes where they continue to quietly, gracefully write their legacy. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.